there are in fact 100 billion other galaxies, each of which contains something like 100 billion stars.
Carl Sagan, an astrophysicist, stated that there are 100 billion galaxies in the universe, and each galaxy contains 100 billion stars. That's 10 to the power of 22 stars, or 1 with 22 zeros. Many of those stars have planets revolving around them. Couldn't just one planet have life? I'm not talking amoebas, but rather intelligent life. When we converse about UFOs, there are numerous chuckles, rolling eyes, and demeaning comments. What does it take for you to believe? People want proof. A personal introduction to an alien or an invitation to fly in a flying saucer? Well, that's not going to happen. This video contains evidence and testimony of the existence of extraterrestrial life, not how they got here. It contains first-person testimonials, and these testimonies include the person's name and the title for credibility. Let's see if you can believe. I'll skip over individual sightings. They're too numerous to detail. People won't believe them. Perhaps the individual is not credible or it was unconfirmed. Would you believe one police officer, a trained observer? Maybe, maybe not. Would you believe 4 police officers from 4 different police jurisdictions as they track their UFO across the country?
Someone just received a call from Highland PD. Reference to a truck driver just stopped in and said there was a flying object in the area of Lebanon. It was like a 2-story house. It had white lights and red blinking lights, and it was last seen southwest over Lebanon. Possibly, could you check the area?
An officer on patrol in the city of Lebanon, Illinois, responded to the dispatcher's query.
Did they say if the truck driver was DUI or anything?
He said he was curious.
Just a quick question. If I happen to find it, what am I supposed to do with it?
After searching for 2 minutes, the officer radioed the dispatcher.
Be advised, there's a very bright white light east of town, and it keeps changing colors. I'll go there and see if maybe it's an aircraft. It doesn't look like an aircraft, though. But that's affirmative. Not the moon, it's not a star. Would you contact Scott Air Force Base to see if they have anything flying in this area, please? Well, whether it's a plane or not, it's heading westbound now. Matter of fact, if the shadow officer looks up, they can probably see it by now.
6 miles southwest, a call came from another police officer, this time in Shiloh, Illinois.
2550. I see something, but I don't know what the heck it is.
13 miles southwest in Millstadt, another police witness reported a similar sighting.
CENTCOM 6004.
Go ahead.
I've got that object inside also.
Are you serious?
It's huge.
Does it look like what does it look like to you?
It's kind of V-shaped. Early.
Moments later, a 4th police witness, an officer from DuPont, Illinois, contacted the dispatcher.
I first seen it with binoculars. You can see the different colors. Now it appears to be white. Very large. It's hard to tell. It's pretty far off in the distance. This object was above me about 500 feet, and it was huge.
There were no more calls to the dispatcher. Whatever it was, if indeed there was anything, vanished into the night skies over Illinois. But police are trained to be reliable observers, and 4 different officers from 4 different departments all reported seeing something that they could not explain.
How about the Belgium wave, or Phoenix lights? Would you believe thousands of witnesses describing the same type of spacecraft that our 4 intrepid police officers chased across Illinois?
Eupen, Belgium, November 29th, 1989. 2 police officers patrolling a country road spot a blinding light coming from a nearby field. Arriving on the scene, They are astounded to see an enormous black triangle hovering silently overhead. Blazing lights emanate from each of the three corners, while a single blood-red beacon blinks on and off at its heart. The men look on in astonishment as the UFO begins moving silently toward the nearby town. They immediately set out in pursuit. Arriving in Eupen, they are among dozens who watch spellbound as it hangs motionless above the town for over 30 minutes. By the end of the night, an estimated 1,500 people will report a UFO encounter in one of history's biggest mass sightings. But for Belgium, the Eupen incident is only the beginning. Over the next 2 years, the nation will experience an unending wave of black triangle sightings that leave authorities scrambling for answers. On several occasions, F-16 fighters are ordered to intercept the objects. But each time they attempt to lock on to the triangles with their targeting systems, they mysteriously malfunction, only to switch back on after the objects are out of range. By the time the wave comes to an end in 1991, some 13,000 people claim to have seen a UFO.
Perhaps it is not a UFO, but rather a prototype of a new spacecraft developed by the government's black operations. The spacecraft is known as the TR-3B.
The TR-3B, code-named Astra, is a tactical reconnaissance aircraft. The first operational flight was in the early 90s. The triangular-shaped nuclear-powered aerospace platform was developed under the top-secret black-budget Aurora program. At least 3 of the billion-dollar-plus TR-3Bs were flying by 1994. The Aurora is the most classified aerospace development program in existence. The TR-3B is the most exotic vehicle created by the Aurora program. It is funded and operationally tasked by the National Reconnaissance Office, the NSA, and the CIA. The TR-3B flying triangle is not fiction.
The design for the TR-3B was patented December 20th, 2004.
A just-discovered patent from 2004 shows the triangular spacecraft known in the UFO realm as the TR-3B. The patent filing date is December 20th, 2004. The publication date is July 6, 2006. The patent says triangular spacecraft, a spacecraft having a triangular hull, with vertical electrostatic line charges on each corner that produce a horizontal electric field parallel to the sides of the hull. This field, interacting with a plane wave emitted by antennas on the side of the hull, generates a force per volume combining both lift and propulsion.
Now, where on earth did the military get this technology to do this? Perhaps Bob Lazar, a contractor for naval intelligence, could answer this.
There were 22 people with Majestic clearance. I had Majestic clearance. Majestic clearance was designated as clearance 38 levels above Q clearance, and Q clearance is the civilian top secret clearance. It probably really hit me when I got inside the craft and looked around and began to understand how the craft was operated, and finally grasped the whole project as a whole, as what we were doing, the fact that we weren't building this thing, we were trying to find out how it was made. We were back engineering it. Normally the bus pulled around to the opposite end of the facility, which was the main entrance, and that's where we went in. On this particular occasion, it pulled up to one of the hangar doors, which were normally closed, and the last one was open. We came out, and I saw the disc in the hangar. Upon seeing it, it struck me that well, this explains all the UFO sightings, not thinking that it was an extraterrestrial craft, that this must have been some advanced form of fighter that we've been working on for years, and people have just caught it being tested, so on and so forth. And it never even occurred to me, even though I was looking at an extraterrestrial vehicle, that this wasn't man-made. People have asserted that, boy, that must have been the most exciting time in your life, and that's not the way it was. When I first got to look inside the craft, all I can say, it's an ominous feeling. You walk in there and it feels as if you shouldn't be there. I know that sounds kind of corny, but it's a real ominous feeling. It's not an exciting feeling. It brings up a whole lot of questions in your mind. Well, where did this come from? And you know that they won't give you the answers to the whole story, but that's the only way I can describe it. There are 9, and their shapes vary. I only got to do a close inspection on one of them. The others I just briefly saw, and they pretty much varied. I give everything nicknames there. The one I worked on was kind of sleek looking, and I gave it the name the Sport Model. There was one that looked like a Jell-O mold. There was one that looked like a top hat.
Oh, so the military re-engineered it. Did Bob say that he saw 9 different styles of UFOs? Could the military have lied to us when they said UFOs don't exist? Maybe some officials are getting tired of this charade and are coming forward to tell the truth.
For 22 and a half years, I served in the United States Army. During my tenure, I was on many occasions asked to serve as the official, unofficial UFO consultant dealing with UFO matters in the areas of my assignment. As a result of my involvement, I was able to ascertain that the United States government knew a whole lot more about UFOs than it was telling the American public. That there was an intelligence involved, that there was a highly evolved technology. I learned that to a degree, we were carrying on a dialogue with this intelligence. We were making every effort we could to acquire this technology and make it part of our own existing technology. We did this, I was told, in the interest of national security. We also had an officially sanctioned deception program. This was in total disregard as to the impact this would have on the individual witnesses and also on their families. This ultimately led to my disillusionment with the program and my involvement in it. I sincerely feel that no government has the right to destroy the lives of the people which it is supposed to serve.
Robert Dean has a list of credentials a mile long. He served 4 years from 1963 to 1967 at Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers, Europe, the military arm of NATO. He was an intelligence analyst with a cosmic top-secret clearance.
Well, Don, it began for me in 1963 when I was assigned to the Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers in Europe. I arrived in the summer of '63 and I was assigned to the Operations Division. I was further assigned to what we call SHOC, the War Room, the Supreme Headquarters Operations Center. And at that time I was given a cosmic top-secret clearance, which was and still is the highest level of security access that NATO has. When I was assigned to the War Room, I learned that a study had been initiated in 1961, and everybody was talking about it. They were gossiping about it. And the subject was UFOs, and that intrigued me a bit. When that study was concluded in 1964, and it was published, and I was still working in the War Room at that time, I had access to this document. I had a chance to read it. And having been exposed to it, I must tell you honestly that my life has never ever quite been the same. Because I read first-hand reports, verifiable NATO military material that indicated that the UFOs were not only real, that they represented something far beyond anything I had ever imagined before. When the study was concluded in '64, they concluded that there were 4 different groups apparently coming and visiting us. Out of those 4 different groups, one group looked exactly like we do, so much so that they could sit beside you in a restaurant or in an airplane or in a theater. and you'd never know. I guess I speak out openly and bluntly about this because I feel so strongly about it. I violate my security oath every time I speak about it. I do it intentionally, and I do it on purpose, because I feel so strongly that the American people not only have a right to know the truth, but they have a need to know the truth. The truth, Don, apparently is simply this, that we're not alone, we've never been alone. We are apparently part of an infinite universe filled with intelligent life. I find that exciting. It doesn't frighten me. The SHAPE study concluded in '64 that if they, whoever they were malevolent or hostile, that they could have taken this planet and cleaned it up and eliminated us, turned us into dog food or whatever, a long, long time ago. That the historical evidence indicates that they've been with us a long time, and I've concluded that we had what I like to call an intimate interrelationship with at least one of those groups, the group that looks exactly like we do. And that point is, I don't like the word alien. I don't think the term alien is appropriate at all here. I like to refer to them as family. We're related to them. I think they had a hand in our being here. And I think the time has come where we're about to meet our extended family. It's going to be very soon, and the people are not ready. And one of the reasons I do speak out so bluntly and so openly is if in some small way I can help people get prepared for this. Because I believe that this reality, once we have accepted it and understood it and gone beyond the fear, will bring about an expansion of consciousness in the human race that will truly help us and prepare us to go out there and take our rightful place in that infinite community of life.
I said, UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying overhead. That gave me the dubious distinction of being the first person of cabinet rank in the G8 group of countries to say so unequivocally. In the 1960s sometime, there was a flotilla of UFOs headed south that crossed into NATO territory in Europe, and the commander-in-chief of the Supreme Allied headquarters in Europe was naturally very shaken. Fortunately, or maybe divine providence, before the panic button was pushed, the flotilla turned around and headed back north. Obviously, they had thought maybe they were Russian, and they were very concerned about it. Anyway, an investigation was launched into this whole subject, and a document was prepared which concluded that at least 4 species had been visiting Earth for thousands of years. And this is my own view at this stage as well. But just as children survive the idea of the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus when they become adult, I think that tax-paying citizens are quite capable of accepting the new and broader reality that we live in a cosmos teeming with life of various sorts. The fact that some other civilizations are more advanced than we are may be humbling. It exists.
I'm Phil Schneider. I spent 17 years in black budget programs, government geologist, as engineer, structural engineer with aerospace applications. Self-taught metallurgist, became kind of famous in my own right. I basically would have a set of notes here, but they're unavailable in all this melee. Up here I have different artifacts explaining Some of them are alien metals that have been produced both on this planet and the confines of outer space that are now used in all stealth aircraft. All stealth aircraft, for instance, all black jets, what you're seeing of black helicopters and the like, the skins and the coatings and the residues that are used predominantly in the aircraft themselves, in the airframes and the rotor blades and the fans, and in some cases in submarines, special titanium hulls, in the Phoenix class submarines now. All this has come from alien technology. 1947 is what the public has been told. Something crashed in the backyard in New Mexico, a place called Roswell, New Mexico. Unfortunately, that's what the public's been told. The military's known about the alien question for the better part of 70 years, and they first saw their glimpse of what was going on as early as 1909 in the American Southwest. Now, Army cavalry evidently were chasing some bandits, and they entered this cave. They were holed up in a cave, and what they found in there was flying discs and little gray guys and all kinds of weird things, and they didn't know how to explain that, and they wrote them down as best they could, and it's been in secret archives ever since. And it's up down by the Truth or Consequences area of New Mexico. This particular piece of metal, I'm going to drop it on the floor here. It'll kind of ring like a bell. You can't break it. Withstand temperatures in excess of 7,500 degrees Fahrenheit. It has niobium in it. It also has mironite in it, element 123. Yeah, please do. It's in a non-crystalline form. This is just kind of a dripping out of the main crucible. Here's a crystalline example. It's in the scalenohedral crystalline form. We got this from the large grays technology. This is grown in the confines of outer space, which has not quite a super vacuum, but by the way, this is capable of withstanding temperatures in excess of 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's great for certain parts of aircraft. We were in the process of the early stages of building. We drilled 4 large tunnel-like holes. Some of them ran 2.5 miles under the surface. Number of the original wells or drilling machines that were used were at the rate of up 2 miles a day. It was fairly rapid. The equipment kept coming up broken. So we wanted to go down. We wanted to send somebody down there, a human observer, or human observers in this case, to find out what was going on. Well, to our total surprise, first of all, the government knew all about it. They didn't tell anybody. When I saw Green Beret and Black Beret people encamped inside of our geologist camp, I knew something was up. The gig was up. First of all, I knew all about the alien agenda. I'll explain that in a few minutes. The large alien grays had been encamped there for as best as believed possible about 400 or 500 years. Had been one of their internal bases. And we drilled holes right on top of it. All the stinking air, all the black sooty air came right out as soon as the first hole was sunk, and all this soot came up, and well, that's when all the hell broke loose, really. All started. Anyway, after we drilled all 4 holes, it took about 2 days to drill all 4 of them. And when you build a underground base, you drill 4 basic holes, and then you build called stopes or cross-member holes across, and then you use blasting equipment, special blasting equipment by the analyzation of the rock formation, and you literally blast out or tunnel out or deflagrate or melt rock out to build the large rooms that are required for this underground base. Well, in this process, I was lowered down the basket of one of these holes, and about from me to this elderly woman here in the front was sitting a 7-foot-tall alien gray. The stench was worse than the worst garbage can you can imagine. The person or the entity was absolutely horrible. I didn't waste any time. I reached for my pistol. At that time, as an engineer, I didn't have time to carry all the folderol of one of these big submachine guns that all the sea spray and the yellow fruit and all the outer perimeter and inner perimeter security people carried. I carried a little Walter PPK pistol with a 9-shot clip. This is in late August of 1979. Now, you got a regular suit of clothes, you got a regular clothes on, plus you're in almost like a spacesuit environment, and you're reaching for a gun. It's not the easiest thing to do, and then to pop a clip in it and start shooting. And I killed 2 of them. Yes, they're mortal, and they do die. However, in the process, one of them did this. All I remember is that he just kind of waved his hand in front of his chest, and the next thing I know, this blue beam hit me and just literally opened me up like a fish. And burnt my fingers right off of me, and it was some form of electrical force, because the kind of like being hit by a lightning bolt burned all my toenails off of me, completely crispy crittered my left foot, burnt the shoe right off of me. All I remember is the smoking remains, and I'm still conscious, but in and out of, I didn't remember much. And there was a Green Beret that was right behind me that risked his life. In fact, he died. But he risked his life. He shoved me back in the basket and hit the button and took me up. And I wouldn't be alive talking to you today if it wasn't for him. I'm forever indebted. He lost his life. 66 Secret Service agents, Green Berets, Black Berets, crack troops lost their lives because the government, our United States government, lied, did not tell us anything about the alien threat. There's a war underneath there, and I'm talking dead serious. It's been going on since that time. Since late August of 1979, our military, the Russian military, basically the militaries of the world, have been in constant conflict with the outer space alien. The small gray, the large gray, the reptilians, the whole thing. There are 11 distinct races of aliens. 2 are benevolent. 1 had to leave here in a hurry because their world is under attack, both on the surface as well as underground. There, the Pleiadians.
During that 2.5 years, or 2+ years, I discovered that there is a base out in Area 54 and Area 53 on the north end of Indian Springs Valley, which the U.S. Air Force maintains for the aliens to use. It is literally an alien base. And I'll come back and talk about that more in subsequent slides. When you look straight north and just a little bit to the east, that's Area 54. And when you look straight north and just a little bit to the west, that's Area 53. The main alien hangar is in those mountains in Area 54, just below the tree line. And the alien housing area is underground in Area 53. You enter them through tunnels. That whole area is inside the Area 51 perimeter. Dreamland is that area, Area 54, Area 53, the mountains on the right, and some of the mountains on the left. And I'll get to that more in greater detail. Now, in addition to the area that I've circled in blue, where the main bases are, there are at least 5 or 7 other sub-bases which the aliens only take their scout craft to around the valley. The main base is where the deep spacecraft arrive. Here is a picture taken by Captain David Coote, and I've put on the red markings. The red writing is mine, but this is a picture that Captain David Coote provided for me. Was kind enough to provide for me, and you'll notice off on the right is Dogbone Lake. Okay, that's inside Dreamland. Dreamland includes
the western part of the desert Southwest game ranges, where the cover story is that if you're out there and you see something white, pretend it's a bighorn sheep. The aliens, as we'll see in a few slides later, have very large eyes, and when you see them looking at you above the sagebrush, it's easy to mistake them for bighorn sheep, especially if you're terrified, and I speak from direct experience. The deep spacecraft, which the tall whites, bring into the base, routinely come down to, when they come into the Earth, Dogbone Lake is their landing field. And they don't normally touch down at Dogbone Lake unless they're in some kind of trouble or they need to adjust something. Normally they just come down to the same altitude as the main hangar. Then after they become stationary and everything is settled down, then they head off to the northwest to where the hangar entrance is.
Wow. The tall whites, otherwise known as Nordics, can come and go as they please, according to Charles Hall. They even have underground lodgings. Now, let's check in with the astronauts and see what they have to say about aliens.
Perhaps one of the most interesting is what Neil Armstrong communicated to Houston when we landed on the moon. According to multiple sources, after landing, the Apollo astronauts transmitted that they were being watched by very large extraterrestrial vehicles. Where does this claim come from? One source is Dr. Stephen Greer, founder of the Disclosure Project and the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. Greer was responsible for bringing forth high-level military whistleblowers from all ranks to testify about the UFO, extraterrestrial phenomenon. He's also had high-level meetings within the Pentagon about this issue, which was verified by Apollo 14 astronaut, and sixth man to walk on the moon, Dr. Edgar Mitchell, in Greer's film series Disclosure. Edgar is one of multiple NASA astronauts who have made some eye-opening comments about the extraterrestrial presence. According to Greer, from a blog post a couple of years ago, close friends, and very close family members of both Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin have separately told me that indeed there were numerous, large UFOs around the crater where the lunar module landed, and that these were seen by both Armstrong and Aldrin. I have also spoken to military officers that have seen the footage of this event, but it has never been made public. One close family member of Buzz Aldrin told me, "It is not my place to out-Buzz on this. Someday if he can speak about it, he will." Neil Armstrong became somewhat of a recluse after the moon landing, and rarely spoke of the historic event. His friends and family have told me that this is because he was a man of such integrity that he simply did not want to be put in a position to lie to the public about such a momentous encounter. How tragic that our heroes have been placed in this untenable situation. When we were organizing the Disclosure Project a few years ago, I asked one of Neil Armstrong's friends if Armstrong would come to Washington to brief members of Congress at the 1997 congressional briefing we organized in April of that year. I was told that Armstrong wished he could, but that if he spoke about what really happened during the moon landing, that Neil Armstrong, his wife, and children would all be killed. It was put to me this bluntly. Another source is a former NASA employee, Ken Johnston. Johnston was a Boeing engineer and a former fighter jock and test pilot for Grumman Aerospace. He was also a Marine and an F-4 pilot, as well as a NASA employee, working as the chief lunar module test pilot at the Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston. According to James Zollberg, a U.S. space journalist, UFO skeptic, and space historian, Johnston seems to be a sweet human being who did honorable service to his country in the military and in the Apollo program. This is a picture of him wearing his gear, taken from a documentary in which he appeared that also featured Buzz Aldrin and other notable NASA colleagues. In the documentary, he reveals, while Neil and Buzz were on the lunar surface, Neil switched to the medical channel, and spoke directly with the chief medical officer saying, "They're here. They're parked on the side of the crater. They're watching us." Johnston is referring to a story put out by former NASA employee Otto Bender. According to Dr. Michael Saller, on a post written on his website, Bender confirmed that ham radio operators had intercepted these VHF signals that were transmitted from Apollo 11, the ones that were kept from the public. Apparently, this is how it went. Mission Control, what's there? Mission Control calling Apollo 11? Apollo 11? These babies are huge, sir, enormous. Oh, God, you wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there are other spacecraft out there. Lined up on the far side of the crater edge. They're on the moon watching us. Here you can see a picture of William Tompkins and Admiral Larry Marsh. As a teenager, Tompkins had an eye for detail and loved to create Navy ship and submarine models. The Navy took interest in his capabilities and recruited him to do work on advanced technology projects. Recently, he has come forward with claims, as many others have, about clandestine black-budget operation programs. According to Tompkins, the landing module, LEM, actually impacted the moon's surface in the Sea of Tranquility crater, which had tremendous-size vehicles parked around part of its rim. When astronaut Neil Armstrong made that first step for man on the moon, he looked up to the edge of the crater and said to Mission Control, "There are other ships here, they are enormous." The public did not hear that statement or see the massive alien starships. Armstrong panned his camera in a 360-degree motion all around the crater, and the CIA then classified the information as way above top secret. Another source for this story comes from Timothy Good, one of the world's leading UFO researchers, who has lectured at universities, schools, and many organizations, including the Institute of Medical Laboratory Sciences, the Royal Canadian Military Institute, the Royal Geographical Society, the Royal Naval Air Reserve Branch, the House of Lords All-Party UFO Study Group, and the Oxford and Cambridge Union Societies. He says that a former member of MI6 revealed her conversation with Neil Armstrong at a NASA conference, when he confirmed that there were other spacecraft on the moon when Apollo 11 landed in 1969. Armstrong also confirmed that the CIA was behind the cover-up. He also goes into more detail about it in his lecture from 2013. So you see, this story has many different sides to it, and given all of the information that's now available in the public domain regarding UFOs and extraterrestrial life, it's really not hard to believe, especially when we already have some compelling information about the moon. Why the above story could very well be true. Morris Chaitlane, whose expertise allowed him to invent radio equipment used to go to the moon, has revealed that at no time when the astronauts were in space were they alone. They were under constant surveillance by UFOs. This statement has been backed up by several astronauts, one of them being Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon. Yes, there have been crashed craft, and bodies recovered. We are not alone in the universe, they have been coming here for a long time. I happen to be privileged enough to be in on the fact that we have been visited on this planet, and the UFO phenomenon is real.
They are here. They are parked on the side of the crater. They are watching us. Crashed craft. Bodies recovered. We are not alone in the universe. Okay. What did the presidents know about this?